All right, time for a tier list. Today we will be doing the tier list of NFL teams, going into the 2023 season. Let's just get into it. You know how tier lists work. I don't have to explain it too much. And let's start off with the Tennessee Titans are the first one on the list. I think a lot of people are just expecting the Tennessee Titans to suck this year. I don't know if I fully am willing to go that far. I think that I'm kind of projecting them to have kind of an average season. They're still going to play good defense. They're still going to run the ball well. Tannehill's quality. You have DeAndre Hopkins now. So I don't know how high I can get it, and kind of depends on how I'm going to evaluate these tiers. I'll put them in B for now, and we'll see if that changes. This is going to be a hot take with the Dolphins. I'm putting them in S tier. I think the Dolphins are a real contender to win the Super Bowl this year. I really do. I think that you look at the addition of Vic Fangio and Jalen Ramsey, this could be a borderline elite defense. And when you add on how good their offense was last year, B tier for sure for me. B tier, S tier for sure for me. Jets, I can't quite go that far. I'm going to put them in A tier. I think there's a couple of nitpicks I have. Basically, my thing is if you're S tier, that's no notes. You're one of the 3 or 4 like real championship contenders. A tier to me is still a championship contender, though. I think this is a team that definitely could win it all. We'll see how Aaron Rodgers, gels in this new offense. That's certainly a question. And I do think that, have a couple issues, including some offensive line concerns and some, secondary receiving concerns for the Jets. But they should still be, they're a real contender for sure. Just being very stingy with the S tiers. And you'll see the Bengals, another A tier. I want to see what's going to happen with that second corner position. Cam Taylor-Britt looked good at times last year, but what are we going to see out of him? It's a question mark. And if he's good, this could still be a very good defense. We know the offense is going to be great, but just the fact that I have that question and the fact that it could be like a below average defense if they can't get that number 2 corner position under control, that knocks it down from S tier. We then have the Cleveland Browns, who are another fascinating one here, where there's stuff to like. They're kind of, again, in that mediocre tier. I think I'm going to actually bring Tennessee down to that tier as well. Make them both the, C tier. That feels about right. It's because C's around mediocre. The weird thing about the Browns, though, is that they could easily be a lot higher than this. If they hit their ceiling, the Deshaun Watson question is a question we're all going to be asking. What are we going to see out of him? And if he's good, he could be good. They have a really good pass rush. Their defense was really underwhelming last year for what looked to be good on paper. Still looks to be good on paper this year. We'll see how well it works out. So things to like. I like Amari Cooper, although they could use some more secondary receivers, in my opinion. Amazing offensive line, amazing running back room, all that stuff with Nick Chubb. But C tier for now. We didn't have the Jaguars. Some people might be putting them in S tier. Some people might be putting them in A tier. I think you could even argue that some people would put them in C tier. I'm going B tier. For me, B tier is the playoff caliber teams. That's how I'm viewing it. Teams that feel like they should be playoff teams. I don't know if I feel like they're contenders as of today. Maybe they'll become contenders. Certainly some teams that I don't put in the contender areas will become contenders. But I think the thing with the Jaguars is their potential is S tier. What is Trevor Lawrence going to do? If he continues to develop, he could be an elite quarterback, but he isn't one today. Calvin Ridley, we haven't seen him in a couple of years. One stat I shared on the podcast that's kind of a shocking one, in my opinion, with Ridley is that he's only had 1 year where he's had over 900 yards. Now, that year he had 1,300, so he had a lot that 1 year. But he has, he really has been a number 1 receiver for 1 year of his career. Again, situation plays into, factor and all that, but we are relying on him to do a lot. I think he's still really good, though. I love that trade from the Jaguars' perspective. He'll bring a lot to the offense if he is Calvin Ridley. There's a risk factor there. Also, what are we going to see out of Trayvon Walker? Everyone knows I am the number 1 Trayvon Walker hater, but I kind of maintained he could take a big leap from year 1 to 2 or even year 2 to 3. So what are we going to see from him now? He's a project, but okay, you played a year. What are we going to get out of him? Really good young secondary, a lot of potential, but for now, can't just base off potential. And that's kind of how I feel about Detroit. I'm also putting them in B tier. I think some people are excited. about these two teams want to put them in higher tiers, and we're rooting for them to be in higher tiers typically. I think the Lions and the Jaguars are a lot of fun to watch. The offense was really well coached last year, was able to scheme guys open, and Amon-Ra St. Brown is kind of putting himself in the elite category. But is the rest of the offense good enough to, are there enough secondary receivers to make it work? It worked last year, but could there be a bit of figuring out that we sometimes see? I don't think so, but it's a question mark. I do have questions on the defense. Yes, on paper it looks good, but we've seen time and time again a defense look good on paper, but a bunch of guys who haven't played together and just take a while to gel. But there's still enough to like about this team. I'm putting them as a playoff caliber team. Minnesota, I'm putting them in C tier. I know that they won a bunch of games last year, but I think we all kind of felt like that was a bit high, the amount of games they were able to win. Where I did think that for Minnesota, they it was a lot of decent amount of luck. I don't think the defense looks very good on paper this year. I don't know if I love these secondary receivers outside of Jefferson, but I still have Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson. That's still going to win you a lot of games just with those two guys alone. Cousins obviously not a superstar, but a good quarterback. Jefferson is a superstar. So I have them at C tier. Tampa Bay, it's weird because I don't feel like they're bad enough to be in D tier. I need another tier. I should have created my own thing, so I could have added another tier instead of just using a pre-made one. Because it feels like they're like D tier, but they're not F tier. But I'll put them in D tier for now because I just can't put them quite up with the mediocre caliber teams. I think that there's, I'm actually going to put them in C tier. I think that makes more sense to me. I want D tier to be like the number one pick contender. So if I have to pick between number one pick and are they going to be a mediocre team, I'll put mediocre. I predicted them 7-10, which to me feels about right. But there's definitely there's some issues here. I don't love the coaching staff at all. The offensive line, I think, could be potentially rough, especially with the, losing Jensen, which just absolutely sucks. Don't love their running game, and they're going to run the ball a lot. Passing game should be strong. I like what I saw from Mayfield out of preseason, and defense should be good, but there's too many issues here for Tampa Bay. San Francisco. The question is, are they S tier or A tier? You could totally argue they are S tier. I'm not going to, though. Save an S tier. Again, there has to be no notes. I have to have no criticisms for S tier. I got some notes. What are we going to see out of Brock Purdy? He was really good last year, but we are relying on a nearly undrafted quarterback who only played about 6 or 7 games last year to continue to play good football. I think it'll work, but there's a question mark there. I also have some concerns about their secondary that I feel people are overlooking. So obviously we know the good about San Francisco, but there is some notes here. So I'm putting it at just A tier instead of S tier. Next up, we have the Atlanta Falcons, another team that they're in the Tampa Bay tier. I had a lot of teams kind of, right around there in the NFC South of another sort of, they're a solid team. There's things to like about them, but the reality is, I still don't think this defense is going to be very good. And I mean, we're going with Desmond Ridder at quarterback. Like, that's a real concern I have. A third round pick who really played like a third round pick in the small sample size we saw from him last year. They're basically expecting Bijan Robinson to come in and be Derrick Henry, which some people think he will be. I'm not one of those people. I think that you shouldn't chase Derrick Henry, who is a generational running back. Like, the idea that, just because you really like Bijan Robinson out of the draft, he's going to be Derrick Henry. That's just usually not how it works. The majority of the generational talents that come out of the draft don't turn into generational talents. That's just how, the math works. Maybe he'll be the exception. If he is Derrick Henry, this offense does look pretty good, and, maybe they could be a playoff team. But even if that's the case, I still think I have them in C tier, but just probably winning the NFC South in that scenario, which is a weak division. The Ravens. I'm having the Ravens A tier. I love what the Ravens did this offseason. I still have a little bit of some secondary concerns, but it's the Ravens. They'll figure it out. Again, maybe that's unfair to do, but like, how many times have we seen this with the Ravens? I'm not buying it. There's a couple teams you just know will figure out defensive backs. The Ravens are one of them. So there's that. And I love how they finally addressed the wide receiver issue. They got Odell. They got Zay Flowers, who's looked good this preseason. So they paid Lamar, which was smart. A tier for me. The Chicago Bears. Do I put the Chicago Bears in the D tier? I do. Sorry, Bears fans. Maybe next year. I know Bears fans are very excited. This is something that we just disagree with. There is reason for optimism. I think DJ Moore will absolutely help out this offense. I think that we should actually have a a good offense around Justin Fields, like an actively like at least like I don't know top 15 supporting cast offensively. I think this defense is still going to be a disaster this year. I just do. There's not the talent there. A lot of young players who could step up, but on paper it looks really rough. And the offense still is a projection for me. So I'm excited to see what Fields will do. This could be a very exciting D tier team, but I do have them as a D tier team. The Dallas Cowboys, who as every year, some people put the Dallas Cowboys in S tier. I'm not doing that. They could be A tier, you could consider, because again, NFC is a bit weaker, but I'm not taking in conference. I'm just talking purely how a team is. I am putting them in B tier for me. Again, they feel like a playoff team. And you could talk me into A tier. You really could, because they added Brandon Cooks, they added Stephon Gilmore. If those two veteran players still play like they played last year, this could be an awesome team. I mean, you could have one of the best corner duos in football, if not the best, with a really good, wide receiver duo with Lamb and with Cooks. I mean, this could be a really good offense and defense. I just feel like there's only so much you can do with a Dak Prescott caliber quarterback. Kind of part of why I also am lower on the Lions is I just feel like, usually to have that kind of success without the elite quarterback, you need to have basically everything else perfect. I don't think Dallas does. I still don't love their run defense, and I still have some questions about their offense and the secondary receivers. Even if Cooks hits, there's some concerns there for me. So B tier feels right for the Dallas Cowboys. The Houston Texans are next on the list, and they will get their annual D tier rating as a team that has a lot more optimism this year than they've had in years past. This is kind of the most exciting Texans team we've seen since Deshaun Watson demanded a trade, right? Like I'm interested in what they can do, and maybe even the year before. They weren't very good Watson's last year there either, but they had optimism that year. No optimism the past couple years, but now you got CJ Stroud. Even if you lose every game, if Stroud looks good, you're happy. Will Anderson, a lot riding on him. Just given how much they gave up for him, but he should still be a very good player for them. I just think there's still too many holes on this roster. I do. So I have him at D tier, but should be an exciting D tier. And I feel kind of similar for Indianapolis. I think there's more talent surrounding Richardson than there is Stroud. I also think Stroud will be better year one than Richardson will be. So kind of goes both ways there. But there are receivers that I like, Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce. You also have, Jelani Woods at the tight end position. There's guys I like here. I'm interested in seeing if this defense can kind of return to form. I'm interested in seeing if basically everyone under offensive line last year had a career down year. So hopefully they bounce back. Bernard Raymond was a really good rookie tackle last year. So they got some guys. No Jonathan Taylor, but there's too many holes on this roster. I'm giving it D tier. And then for the Rams, it's weird because I feel like at points during the offseason, I was like, why is everyone sleeping on the Rams? Then I looked at the roster and said, okay, yeah, I kind of get it. They're D tier for me, which is crazy to say for a team that has Aaron Donald, they have Cooper Kupp. How could they possibly be, Stafford is still a good quarterback. They just don't have a ton else. Like there's just so many flaws on this roster. This defense could be abysmal next year. And I still think that the offense has some holes. Sean McVay might be able to work a miracle, but talent-wise right now, I'm just not a fan of this team. The other LA team, the Chargers, I'm going B tier once again. There's hope for A tier. I really have liked what I've seen from Quentin Johnston. I think that he's looked great at times. Again, the drop issues are the drop issues, but he's been getting pretty consistently open at the preseason, and he was my favorite wide receiver coming out of college. I think he's really good. And if they have three number one receivers, basically, with Justin Herbert, that might not matter what the issues are with your secondary issues and, the defense never being able to stop the run. But for now, I can't go based off projection. There still are issues, but definitely another team, kind of all the B tier teams. It's like, I can see if you hit your potential, you're S tier, but I just don't know if you're going to hit your potential. The Raiders, I'm in between C and D tier. I think I'm going to go C tier for the Raiders. I like their offense just enough. I think I'm a little higher on the Raiders than everyone who isn't a Raiders fan is. That's kind of, you could make that the headline of this channel is a little higher on the Raiders than everyone other than Raiders fans. But their offense should be good. That's kind of the thing you look at. And it is an offense wins championships league. So you have that. I do think their offense will be effective. I just don't think it'll be like a top 5 offense in football. It could be a top 15, maybe even top 10 if everything goes right, given the talent around them. I think the defense should be really bad, though. So I can't put it above C tier, and it's closer to D tier than B tier, certainly. Washington. I'm going C tier. There needs to be tiers here. So let's put it like an imaginary line in between Washington and Tampa Bay. Because there's going to be C plus and C minus here. As I like parts of this Washington team. Don't know how much I trust Sam Howell. And I think the thing about Washington is, like, I feel like we do this every year. You look at their roster, and there really isn't a lot of holes here. The issue is there just isn't a lot of like superstars. You have Montez Sweat, he's really good. You have Terry McLaurin, he's really good. But like they could use, a couple more just like Pro Bowl caliber players, kind of their issue, I feel like. And maybe they have that. Maybe, like Curtis Samuel's still really good. Maybe you have finally a breakout year from Chase Young. You do have Deron Payne in there as well. So you have players, but I feel like that's kind of the issue with Washington is it's not necessarily where are their holes. It's kind of just where are their big strengths. And the biggest hole they have is the quarterback position, which is a pretty big hole to have. The Chiefs are S tier. Do we need to say more? I don't know. Chiefs are good. They got Mahomes. They'll be all right. The Saints in the mix, also going C tier. I'm going to put them do I put them in the C minus tier or the C plus tier? I think I'm also going to still stick with C minus. So in between that imaginary line between Washington and Tampa Bay. Again, there's things to like. They have the best quarterback in that division, at least right now. We'll see how good Bryce Young gets, and I guess how good Desmond Ridder gets. But I'm banking on Carr being the best one right away. There's just so much projection with this team. The Saints have a lot of players that are either coming off of bad years or like Michael Thomas coming off of several years of not getting a ton of playing time. A lot of question marks with this football team, but some really talented players on this mix as well, and could absolutely do well. I am projecting them to win that division, which I think will be a weak division. But I still gave them a 7-10 projection because I think the weak division sucks. The Giants. Everyone knows I am the world's biggest Giants hater, apparently. I just don't buy into this team. They're C minus for me. There's I actually kind of like Daniel Jones as a player. I think he's way overpaid, and I think that contract is a mess. But I actually think he's better than some people give him credit for. Saquon Barkley is obviously awesome, and the receiving core should be better than it was last year. Still don't think it's going to be very good though. They need Evan Neal to step up like that. He was one of the worst tackles in football last year. They need him to play well and pull in Andrew Thomas and go from playing awful to playing really good. I still don't love that defense on paper. This is a really well-coached team, but I just don't know how much I trust even a great coaching staff to consistently find wins that they shouldn't have on the schedule. But they did it last year, so maybe they'll do it again this year. The Eagles, to me, are another S-tier caliber team. In fact, when I did my podcast prediction, I predicted them to win the Super Bowl. Now, that might seem a little bit of a scorching hot take. Maybe not scorching hot take. They were in the Super Bowl last year, but maybe that's a bit of a hot take. But keep in mind, part of why I'm doing it is the NFC is just way weaker than the AFC. It's an easier pathway. The Chiefs might have to beat like the Dolphins and the Jets to get there. The Eagles will have to beat the 49ers, but who else really? The Lions might be the third best team, which, in that conference. Not to disrespect the Lions, but just, I'm projecting the Bengals to do a lot better than the Lions this year. That's just how I view it. But also, I think they're a really talented team. There are some holes now on this roster, but you can deal without off-ball linebacker. They didn't lose the key pieces, I thought, this offseason and had a really good draft. So, yeah, S tier there. The Steelers, I know Steelers fans will want them to be A tier. I'm going B tier. I do think I like the Steelers. I think they're pretty good. There's a lot to like about the Steelers. For one thing, I thought Kenny Pickett had a really promising rookie year. I think that the only reason people are sleeping on it is because people use box score stats too frequently. And his box score stats weren't great, mostly due to bad luck, I thought. I actually thought he was actively very good as a rookie and hopefully will continue to grow as a player. I still question, like, you have George Pickens, you have Deontay Johnson. Are either of those guys a number one? They're both very good, but are they a number one? I just don't know. Maybe They might be, but as of right now, I haven't seen them like consistently be a number one just yet. They both look like good number twos, which is you can still work with that. I think Najee Harris gets too much criticism. I think he's fine. The defense should still be good. I do have some concerns about the corner room, and that's an issue. They should rush the passer very well, though. So things to like about the Steelers, but concerns I have as well. So I think they'll be a playoff caliber team. I don't know if they get in the tough AFC, but they feel like a playoff caliber team. So that's why I have them at B tier. Broncos, another C tier team. I think I am going to go C plus here. C plus, not C minus. Because again, if Russell Wilson is good, this is probably an A caliber team. Like that's all they need is Russell Wilson to be Russell Wilson again. But I don't know if that's going to happen. Love the defense. I still don't love this receiving core. I feel like it's been a pretty overrated receiving core for a minute now, and I still stand by that. But offensive line should be very good. Should be able to run the ball effectively. Just what are we going to get out of Russell Wilson? The Packers are going to be they're in that tier as well, C plus. Of I could see them making a run at the playoffs. The Jordan Love thing is such a wild card. As of right now, I'm basically viewing him as a rookie, which is I don't expect much from him. But there still is a lot to like. This defense on paper is great. Granted, it was on paper great last year and ended up sucking, so I don't know what happened there. Still would like them to have more receiving options, but Christian Watson is, a number one option. At least he was last year. So we'll see what he can do and how he can grow. They still should run the ball effectively, even though they don't have the best offensive line, in my opinion. So things to like, but things to not love as well. So C plus. Next up, the Carolina Panthers. They are another C minus tier team. Again, that's where all of the NFC South ends up being. Interestingly enough, I do have the Saints winning the division, as I said earlier. But there's things I like about this Panthers team. I kind of feel like they're getting a bit slept on. I do think Bryce Young should come in right away and play pretty effective football. I think definitely doesn't have the best supporting cast. I like the offensive line, but the rest is kind of a bit of a mess right now. Maybe mess is a strong word, but definitely not good. The defense was good last year. I still would like them to have another corner or two, though. So things to like about this team, but I can't go, much higher than C minus. The Cardinals, yeah, I gotta go D caliber team, which is interesting because I think that you look at Cardinals and Rams both have good quarterbacks. What are we going to get out of Kyler is a fair question, and obviously he's not going to play right away. Once he comes in, he has been an MVP candidate, not just an MVP candidate. He was, I keep going back to this. There was a point midway through a season 2 years ago where Cliff Kingsbury was going to win Coach of the Year and Kyler Murray was going to win MVP. That's what was going to happen, and then everything went to hell. Even if Kyler's awesome, though, this isn't a very good team. There's very little talent around him. Buda Baker's awesome, but there's some issues here. The Bills, again, some people would put as S tier, but I say if I have some concerns, I'm going to put it in A tier. I still would like them to have another receiver. I have some offensive line concerns of Buffalo. And what are we getting out of Tre'Davious White? Tre'Davious White, a player who has been a top 5 corner in football in years past, but came off an injury, played last year, and the defense got significantly worse once he went out there because they kept putting him at number 1 corner when he just wasn't ready for it. And I think it hurt them more than helped them. If he goes back to being a number 1 corner, maybe you could bump them up to S tier, but for now, got to keep him at A tier. The Seattle Seahawks are a very fascinating roster that I am going to be putting in B tier as well, but definitely another one where it's like, man, this potential is S tier. I mean, Geno Smith, I think is a very good quarterback. I don't know if he's not the elite quarterback. He's not, but he's a very good quarterback. He is in that Prescott and Jared Goff tier. And in my opinion, Smith was better than those other 2 quarterbacks last year. You also have him with a really good 1, 2, 3 options, which that's something, if you notice, I care a lot about, is not just having 2 options, but 3 options. And we know Tyler Lockett, we know DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to just work as a number 3. I can't see that not working right away as a slot receiver. What will he do above that is the question, but he's going to help them out to some degree. I want to see those young tackles play better. I like Abraham Lucas a solid amount last year. Charles Cross, I thought, was disappointing, but not a mess like Evan Neal was last year. So hopefully he can continue to improve and get better. And then, some good young secondary players. If this defense can be top 10 and this offense can be top 10, like, yeah, that's a really good team. And maybe there's even higher potential there. Finally, New England. I know Podcast Kyle's having them in S tier, but no, cannot do that. I got to put them in the C plus tier, not C minus. There is things to like about this roster. I do trust Bill Belichick to defensively game plan well, right? That's something you got to trust him to be able to do. I'm interested in seeing what Mac Jones will do. I think having an actual offensive coordinator instead of Matt Patricia will help. Maybe don't just hire your friend. That might be a good idea. But as a whole, plenty to like about this Patriots team, but also just like the issues are still the issues. I still don't know if I love this receiving core. I still don't know how good their passing attack is going to be. I still think that Belichick, who, for a while was ahead of the eight ball in terms of aggressive, fourth down decision making and just sort of, having more of a new school approach, the game has passed him by in terms of game management stuff. He's typically one of the worst in the league statistics wise in terms of fourth down decision making and things of that nature. So there's things to like about the Patriots, but I just don't know if I can put them higher than this. So yeah, that's my tier rankings I had to split a couple up. So just to reiterate, top three: Dolphins, Chiefs, and Eagles. The next, 5 and 8 tier are Jets, Bengals, 49ers, Ravens, and Bills. Also worth mentioning, I think it went without saying, but these are in no particular order, with the exception of C tier. Interesting to note, out of the top 8 teams, 6 of them in the AFC, definitely pretty fascinating as well. And then also, one, two, there's 6 in the B tier. Half of those are in the AFC, half of those are in the NFC. So I only have 5 NFC teams that are in the top 3 tiers. Interestingly enough, could be good news for a team like Minnesota, who I do have making the playoffs, simply just due to I have them making playoffs with an 8-9 record, getting that 7 seed. I have the Saints with a 7-10 record, winning the division, just given the weirdness of the NFC. C tier, again, the Titans, Browns, Vikings, Patriots, Broncos, Packers, and Washington football team all are in the C plus tier. Actually, it worked out perfectly where the cutoff was right there. We didn't have the the C minus tier are all right there, and then finally D tier are those 5 teams at the bottom. That is my tier list. Let me know in the comments below, why do you disagree? Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.